And welcome to another episode of 57% True. My name is Jason, your irreverent host. Happy to have you back. Thank you for listening to another episode. Today we are going to have a very good friend of mine that I have known entirely way too long. If you listen to the old podcast, the rest of us, you will recognize this gentleman. For those of you who have not, you are in for a treat. We'll talk about it here exactly how long I've known this guy, but he's definitely my sports go-to guy. That doesn't mean that this entire episode is going to be about sports, but we're going to talk about sports. So anyway, with no further ado, I'm going to introduce you to my good friend Tad, who was actually talking to me through Skype, well actually Discord, sorry, from South Carolina, so that's pretty sweet. And so say hi to everybody, Tad.
Hey, thanks for having me on, Jason. I really appreciate you inviting me to join the new podcast.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for taking time out of your busy life to hang out with me. So tell
reruns of Alias were really taking up a lot of my time, and I'm not even joking.
You just gotta clear out that TiVo, don't you? Just get rid of that DVR.
Yeah.
Alright, so, you don't have to go, like, insanely long-winded or anything, but, how long have we known each other? Was it third grade that you moved?
Well, I moved in the middle of second grade. I don't remember if we were in the same class or not. I don't think we were.
I don't either.
But I know we ended up playing Little League. Well, I know we were in the same class, and I know we played Little League together that year, too.
Yeah.
So, in third grade, so.
Yeah.
It's been a while. So that was like 10 years ago?
10 years. Yes. We are 18 years old. And
yes, we are. Yeah, in our minds.
In a way, I wish, but in a way, I'm so glad we're not.
Yes. I think the older I get, the more I realize I'm glad I'm not 18.
No kidding. So, since we're talking about 5 states away from each other, what you been doing? What's your loves, your hopes, your dreams?
My loves and hopes and dreams revolve around, to get it out of the way, and it is definitely my first two, my faith in God,
sure,
my wife, and the Ohio State Buckeyes, the Cincinnati Reds, and the Cleveland Browns. Those three in no particular order. Just depending on the season.
The sports teams are three, no particular reason, right? Not including the first two.
Correct. Yeah, the other two are very importantly in the order they're in.
That's good. Okay.
So, but no, I'm a big sports nut. Although I never played past high school. I never coached, other than like Little League assistant for 1 year. I'm just a fan. I'd like to think I'm a little more knowledgeable than some fans, but I know I'm not as knowledgeable as every fan. I'm kind of an average lunatic. Yeah, let's go with that.
That's a good word. All right. Well, on the agenda, I know that you wanted to talk about some sports things, which is cool. We're definitely going to get into a couple other issues as well. And with the new format, since you were on the old one, we try to stay kind of socially conscious. So it's more, we like to talk about different ways that you can help, and also seeing things from different people's point of views and things of that nature, which we did on the old one, but it was a lot more political. We'll obviously get political because unfortunately it's 2021 and you have to. But
cannot avoid it.
Yeah, but for the most part, it's definitely the social issues and stuff. But based on that, sports will come into play, and we're going to talk about that right now because I would like to talk about the Ohio State Buckeyes first.
OH.
Oh, so
right.
All these people saying that Ohio State should not have even been in because they only played 5 games when the Big Ten said there should have been 6 to qualify. They bent the rules again for Ohio State. What do you say to all the people that are just like, this is garbage?
Well, let me tell you what I say to all the Clemson knuckleheads. And yes, you did hear that correctly. It's Clemson with a P. They love it when you call them that. I learned that from a University of South Carolina fan. Um, so, so I know it's true because they've got a long history of hating Clemson.
Oh yeah.
But what I've told them was, quite frankly, would it really have made a difference if we had blown out Maryland, Illinois, and Michigan? Because those were terrible teams this year.
Correct.
So even if they had let us play the games with our third string, we probably still would have won each game by 20. Would that have made Ohio State more worthy?
Right.
I mean, they clearly belonged. They blew out Clemson.
Yeah,
So.
and I'll tell you, that really shocked me. I kept not watching the game. I wanted to watch so bad, but being, superstitious, I'm like, no, I'm not going to watch because they've lost every meeting that they've had with them, and it's been bad. And then I would check my phone every once in a while. We were playing euchre with my in-laws, and they were like, stop looking at it. You're going to ruin it. I was like, I know, but I still got to know. And then when I saw we were up 4 touchdowns at one point, if I remember correctly.
I believe so,
and I was like, you have to be kidding me. Yeah, and that just blew my mind. My thing that I thought was funny was that, there were people saying, well, of course they're going to bend the rules for Ohio State because it's Ohio State. First of all, they already, quote-unquote, bent the rules to even allow 6 games as a measuring stick, right, for allowing people into the playoffs or the Big Ten championship. So to bend it again, it's not necessarily just for one school, but the fact that the school that we were trying to play was Michigan.
Oh, that was so funny.
So, I mean, I'm one that kind of likes to dabble his toe in the conspiracy theory pool sometimes, and I just think it's funny that I really hope this isn't true, because especially when I saw one of Clemson's coach's daughters tweeted some horrible things. I hope it's not true that they did it on purpose. Like, they were just like, oh, look at that, someone's got COVID, we can't play, oh no. Like, I hope that wasn't it. But you kind of have to wonder, considering we've beaten them how many years in a row now?
It's over 3,500 days. So,
yeah,
or 3,300 days. It's almost 10 years.
Okay, I wasn't sure if it was 10 or over, but anyway, it's been a long time, and I really hope that that's not what it was. Like, they were like, aha, well, if we don't play them, then they won't get in, and screw the record. But now they can't play. I really hope that's not the case. But if you're a die-hard OSU fan, and knowing the history and everything, and considering even ESPN has called Ohio State-Michigan rivalry the number one rivalry in college sports, if not all sports, yeah, it's hard not to think about it.
Well, let me offer you something on that. About 2 weeks before the game, my closest friend down here, who's from Central Ohio, is a big Michigan fan. He floated the idea. He said Michigan ought to just say they got COVID and not play.
Yeah.
Screw Ohio State.
And it's one of those things, it's almost like you can't say it because COVID is very serious. I mean, it's, so you can't really say it, but at the same time, you have to be thinking it. Like, even if you're not a hardcore sports fan, you have to be thinking it.
Yeah, because nothing is off limits in this rivalry. That's the thing.
Oh, yeah.
There is no love. There is no true respect, especially among fans. Now, players and coaches respect each other to a certain level.
Of course.
And I get that. You and I both played some sports, and you respect your opponent even if you hate them. You still respect that they got on the field with you and did battle.
Right.
But fans, there's nothing sacred, nothing, and nothing's off limits. So if we're talking about COVID, that's not even buzzing the radar of what we'll do to each other.
Right. So yes, OSU did beat Clemson. Sorry, got that wrong. So they are going to the big dance against Alabama. Yes.
Yes, Monday night.
Okay,
the 11th.
And if I recall correctly, before the Clemson game, the coaches there were saying that OSU should have been ranked 11th.
Yeah, in fact, Dabo Swinney, the head coach of Clemson, or should I say Dumbo Swiney?
Oh.
Yeah. Sorry, I don't like the guy, and I lost a lot of respect for him over the past year. But this was kind of last straw in the coach's poll, and he admits he fills out his own poll. Some guys have their assistants do it, but he admitted and proudly stated that he ranked Ohio State 11th. No team that only played 5 or 6 games deserves to be in the top 10. Oh, yeah? Okay, fine.
Oh, yeah.
Still kick your butt.
Right. No kidding. So, and then if I remember right, though, didn't the coach of Alabama rank us 6th?
He did. I think it was either 5th. I think it was 5th.
Okay.
And I don't. He's wrong, but I understand. He was protecting the SEC a little bit. He wanted Texas A&M. He felt they had a fair shot. I don't know why, because their one loss was to Alabama by 28 points. So
yeah,
it. I don't think he believed it necessarily. I don't think he put that much thought into it. If you know a lot about Nick Saban, he's really arrogant, and he does things his way and doesn't care how anyone thinks about it. It's worked for him. I don't like him, but he's not your average Alabama guy. Of course, he's not from Alabama.
That would do it. Yeah,
20s, but he's not.
That's awesome. So, yeah, I'm kind of interested to see how this will play out. Really, I'm just happy to see him, and not just because I'm an OSU fan, but mostly just because they cranked out Clemson. That really made me happy.
Yeah.
And I mean, we've got a good history with Alabama, though. Wasn't it, good Lord, was it 20 years ago?
It was 2014. It was the first year of the championship, the playoff.
Yeah,
and it was in the first round. We were not giving them much of a chance. I think we were probably 6.5 point underdogs, something like that. And most people thought it should have been higher. And Ezekiel Elliott and Cardale Jones just poured it on them. Mm-hmm. And the final score was close. I think it was 42-35. But if you watch the game, Alabama was never within real striking distance the entire, well, at least from the second quarter on.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, we have that on them. They've got some older victories back, before even you or I were born.
Mm-hmm.
So at least 20 years ago.
That's cool. Yeah,
but no, it was actually in the 70s. I think it was like 72 or 74.
Oh, okay.
The last time we played before. The last time they beat us, I think. So,
I got you. Okay.
Yeah.
So, yeah, looking forward to that. I'll kind of wrap up the OSU thing with this. Sure. This is going to sound very arrogant, but, the whole commercial for this thing talks about, we're going to talk about things you shouldn't talk about. I'm going to go out and say, even if they did pull strings to get OSU into the playoffs like they did, to give us a chance, whatever, I'm going to say, really, they should have, because OSU probably shouldn't be in the Big Ten. I think they should be looking for a bigger conference. What do you think?
Not so much bigger, but better.
Better, right? Well, bigger doesn't play teams, and we got 14 conference. Yeah.
But here's the thing. Where would they go? A lot of people try to tell us that the ACC is really good. They have Clemson. That's about it.
Yeah.
I mean, if you start looking at who their next best teams are, obviously Notre Dame doesn't count because that was just for this season.
Yes.
So they won't be there anymore, at least not unless they make a deal, and I'm sure they won't.
Sure.
But you're talking about teams like NC State, North Carolina, Miami, who isn't what they used to be, Wake Forest. Are those teams really any better than Wisconsin? Not a single one of them can actually claim that they are.
Right. No, I'm talking basketball. That's another story. But
yeah, this is football only.
Right.
Basketball
Yes.
is a whole different story. I personally think Ohio State should go independent. Yeah. They don't need a conference. Here's my big question to everyone that says, "Well, we gotta stay in the Big Ten. It's tradition." Okay, first off, tradition. At this point, the way college football is set up, there is no tradition left. It is all about winning a national title
anymore.
It really is. Now, we can keep some of the traditions with the bowl games and all that,
Sure.
and I do think we should because history is important. But the way the game is set up right now, if we want anything other than the same three teams at the top, which is Ohio State, Clemson, and Alabama, and then a rotation of about 5 or 6 other teams that filter their way in and out. You had LSU last year, we had Oklahoma for a couple years, Oregon, Michigan State got a shot and embarrassed themselves. You're going to have a little rotation there, but what about schools like Appalachian State that, have done really well in the past? Coastal Carolina, BYU this year.
Yep.
They were really good. Cincinnati. I mean,
yeah.
They almost knocked off Georgia. And frankly, if Luke Fickell hadn't done the same kind of garbage he did he was the interim at Ohio State, he would have won that game.
Yep.
He strategically lost that game for them. And let me be clear, I don't hate Luke Fickell. I love Luke Fickell, but he screwed them out of a win that would have changed their program.
Yeah.
And I think he knows it. I mean, I would hope he would never come out and admit it because it doesn't help anything. But I know that man is not sleeping well right now.
Right. Yeah, no kidding. So. Well, let's change over from college to pro since you're a big fan of the Browns and what a crazy year they're having. So,
oh my gosh.
I have cousins that live on Lake Erie up near the Sandusky area, and they are just ecstatic about everything, because they are diehard fans.
Yeah.
And I think it's great that they finally, are getting some positivity out of them. So what's your take on that?
I mean, the Browns were more important to me growing up than the Buckeyes. I think I fell in love with guys like Bernie Kosar and Webster Slaughter and Frank Minifield and Hanford Dixon, Clay Matthews. And those guys were larger than life. They were so good. And they just couldn't get there. So, I mean, for me, we have to be of a certain age, basically our age or older, to have seen a Browns team that has been good for more than just a flash in the pan.
Yeah.
Like literally one season and then bad for 5 to 10 more. So much about the Browns is their history. The greatest football player to ever walk this planet, and I will say this till the day I die, is Jim Brown. I never saw him play a single down, but my dad did.
Yeah.
And he talks about him all the time. I've seen the videos. Yes, it was a different era, but there was no single more dominant player in the game of football ever than Jim Brown. And if you talk to the old school guys that are around that either played with him or saw him play when they were younger, they'll tell you there was nobody better.
Yeah.
There's been some amazing players since then, of course. It's hard to deny what Tom Brady's done.
Sure.
It's hard to deny that Barry Sanders was the single most elusive person on the planet.
Yes.
That guy was awesome. I hated whenever we played him, but he was amazing. So you got that history. One of the greatest quarterbacks of all time was Otto Graham. He's even older than Jim Brown. But you start looking at some of the numbers he put up in an era where passing really wasn't that big of a deal. I mean, he was amazing.
Yeah.
And then you get into the cardiac kids of the late 70s, early 80s. Then you get into the Kosar era where 2 words I hate to say, the fumble and the drive, or the drive and then the fumble.
Yeah.
Historically is how it went. Just you would think there would be nothing that could tear your heart out any more than that. Oh, wait. And then they literally tore the team out of Cleveland and moved it to Baltimore. And wow, that honestly, even though, and we talked about this the last time you and I spoke on a podcast, I'm a baseball fan first, but there's never been a darker day in my life than when the Browns left Cleveland. It was so wrong.
It was strange. Yeah.
Yeah. And those 4 or 5 years afterward were really weird for me for football. That's really where I became a huge. I was always an Ohio State fan, but that's really where my focus shifted to Ohio State being the thing. And we weren't winning at that point yet. It was still the John Cooper era where we beat everybody we were supposed to and nobody that was actually good.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, my first game. Well, I won't go back into Ohio State stuff, but no, the Browns have a long suffering past, and then once they finally return, oh, they've been awful.
Yeah.
They tied the NFL record a few years ago for futility, and by winning 0 games, they were 4-0 in the preseason and 0-16 in the regular season. It couldn't have been more Cleveland Browns. They've just had a lot of hard luck along the way. They've done a lot to themselves. Coach after coach, quarterback after quarterback, snatching defeat from the jaws of victory more times than you can count.
Yeah.
That's who they are. So to actually see the Browns win consistently, look pretty good doing it in most of their wins, and get into the playoffs, albeit Browns as it gets. Basically, the Steelers let them in.
Yeah.
And they did it on purpose. Let's be clear. They wanted to play the Browns. They knew if they won, there was a real good chance they'd have to play the Titans. They tanked. I mean,
there goes that toe in that conspiracy pool.
What's that?
There goes that toe in that conspiracy pool.
Yeah, but if you look at what they did.
No, I know. But yeah, again, it's one of those things where you're watching and it's hard not to think that.
Yeah, I mean, usually you want the higher seed and you'll play for it. This time they knew exactly what they wanted. So, and that's fine. Hey, let us in, especially I guarantee the Browns are motivated. These guys have been through a lot this year. They've had a lot of COVID running through that locker room. I don't know that they're holding a single practice this week.
Really?
Yeah, it's so bad. They're not even going to have their head coach for the game.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I really wish the NFL would change some rules and allow him to, at least have a headset that he can call in on from home, or put him in one of the many empty booths, press boxes or whatever. But
yeah,
they've got their rules. So,
well, when you were talking about Jim Brown, it just made me think when we were kids, we'd see like commercials and stuff, and Joe Namath would be, talking about Ben Gay or something and everything. And I'm like, who is this guy? And my dad's like, oh, yeah, he used to be a really good professional player. Uh-oh. Did I lose you? I lost Tad. Are you back?
I'm back.
Okay.
I'm not sure what happened there.
I don't know. That was weird. I was like, okay. Anyway, so I'll go back to that. So, but no, we'd see these commercials of all these older guys, and I'd be like, who are these guys, Dad? And he'd be like, well, they used to play professional football. And I was like, what? That's so weird. And now we're seeing it, like you have Jim Brown or even Terry Bradshaw. Who was the other one? Aikman. That's another one. Which I hate thinking about Aikman. But anyway, I'm a Cowboys fan, and you can make fun of me all you want for that too. That's okay. But yeah, I just think that part was funny. When I was younger, and then you're like, you're seeing these people who've never played, and I'm like, yeah, you say Jim Brown, and most people are like, oh, you mean the NFL on Fox guy? Like
James Brown. No, different guy. Way different guy.
But yeah, it's just interesting when you see some of these guys, and they got to do something. But I mean, it also shows how much they love the game to the point where, they're just sitting around talking about it. They lived it. They know all this stuff. They don't want to, leave it, kind of their glory day kind of thing. And then here they are doing this stuff. Spielman. I didn't realize he's doing stuff now from OSU. He played pro for a few years.
Quite a few. He was a Pro Bowler several times. Undersized guy for a linebacker, and he had a long, successful career. Man, his injury that took him out stunk. It couldn't have been more fitting. Guy from Northeast Ohio, from Massillon of all places.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't get much more legendary in high school football than Massillon. Went to Ohio State, ironically, after initially considering Michigan. Yeah. And his dad, the football coach, told him, that's fine. You go there, we'll never speak again. He went to Ohio State. So
that's crazy.
And then he ends up playing his career, at least early on, in Detroit, so next door to the University of Michigan.
Yep.
Then he went to Buffalo, and then he signed a 1-year deal to end his career with the Browns.
Yeah.
Got hurt in, I think, the first practice of preseason and never played for the Browns. Still, I think, sold more jerseys that year than any other Browns player.
I would certainly think so, yes.
Yeah,
Hometown boy coming back, absolutely.
Yeah, Spiels is an interesting guy. I mean, obviously, what his first wife went through and battled through with the breast cancer, and I mean, wow, what an amazing couple of people. But then, Spiels got into broadcasting actually quite a while ago. I know he paid his dues. He didn't just jump straight out of the NFL and go into the primary booth for CBS like Tony Romo did.
Right, no kidding. No,
he was doing like Ball State versus Jones College or something.
Yeah.
Thing. But and he was terrible. Oh my gosh, he was terrible for a long time. But he got better and he got better and he kept getting better, and now he's, in my opinion, there's not anybody I'd rather listen to calling a football game than Chris Spielman. Well, maybe Al Michaels, just because.
That's Al Michaels.
Al Michaels.
Right. So. Not Madden. As much as I love that guy and how goofy he is. Him and Pat.
He had his time.
Yeah.
It was if you're a purist, you probably didn't care for the guy.
Right.
If you were in it for the entertainment, he was your man.
He was your man. Oh, I loved it.
Yeah.
All right, so we'll kind of get off of that and get more onto the, unless there's anything else you wanted to say about it.
No, just go Browns. I mean, it'd be great to get a playoff victory. I think I was like 10 the last time that happened.
So that was like 8 years ago.
8 years ago.
Yeah, Tad and I say that we're old. We're really not that old, but at the same time, we're feeling old. So if you feel that way, you know exactly how old we are. So to get into the things we're not supposed to talk about, I know that you had mentioned something about wanting to speak about the social justice kind of things going on with pro sports that was happening. It's died down quite a bit, it seems like, anyway, but especially a few months back.
Yeah, I mean, what a weird year. COVID stopped the season. Then they barely get it started, and the George Floyd thing comes into public eye. And then there's Breonna Taylor that finally got some recognition, and Ahmaud Arbery, and just several others. Now Jacob Blake was the most recent one, and it changed sports. Not last year, but 2019, we saw a change. Up until then, we kept seeing the bigger names in sports, and in particular, the actual influence of the broadcasters like ESPN. They were pushing politics pretty hard and social stuff pretty hard. Then in 2019, basically everyone said, hey, this is killing our ratings. Everyone's just fighting. That doesn't work for our demographic. That works for Fox. That works for MSNBC and CNN and all them. But at ESPN, we can't have this division. So they basically put the clamp down on some of their people that were more outspoken and said, you can't do it. A couple of them did it anyway. They got their hands slapped really hard, and it had died down. And then, like I said, 2020 happened, and you couldn't deny that people were talking about it. The NBA was about to get started back up, and the players said, we're not playing. It wasn't even you have to give us more money. It wasn't a lockout. It was with what's going on in our world, we can't do much. We're just basketball players. But the one thing we can do is withhold basketball. In a time where, if you're a sports fan, even a little bit, we were watching Korean baseball. You realize how boring that is?
Right.
Oh, you got like two guys you've ever heard of in the entire league. And if you're a fan of Korean baseball, be my guest. I'm a baseball purist. There's nothing I want to watch in baseball that isn't Major League Baseball if I'm truly watching the game. Minor league is fine, but it's not the same either. I love going to minor league games. They're a great experience. But
Columbia Fireflies.
Go
All right.
Fireflies, the Tebows, at least for a season.
Tebow's, that's
We
right.
never did go, did we?
No,
Oh
that
well.
sucked. Anyway.
Yeah. But yeah, that kind of COVID and the social justice stuff of 2020 made it where, okay, we at least have to talk about it. We have to do something about it. And the players got really serious. They said, we don't have to play. We don't want to play. If we have to be silent, we're just not going to. And it was led by the biggest names in the sport. Nobody was silent. And whether you want to call that a coup or whether you want to call it an awakening, I'm not really here to judge the opinion on it. It was just reality. Something had to be done. So the NBA and then ultimately baseball followed and football followed later. They said, "Hey, you know what? We can't just ignore this. If this is what's important to our players, it needs to be important to us." And they allowed players to start putting messages on their jerseys. They painted messages on the court. Do I think this is here to stay? Probably not. I don't think it needs to be. I think it served its purpose. And not just to appease the players. I want to be 100% clear there. I think the awareness that the players were looking for the issues were made clear. Their voices were heard, and they now have a platform that's a little bit different. You're always going to have people that are going to say, just play your sport. Well, Jason, they could tell me, just do your job. You know, spend your company's money. They could tell my wife, just count your company's money. They could tell you, just do your podcast, but don't talk about anything.
Right.
We all have an opinion. Now, are they as well versed as experts in those areas? Maybe, maybe not. But a lot of these guys aren't talking from political perspectives. They're talking from their personal life experiences. So it's kind of hard to tell them, oh, you didn't experience that when they really did.
Right.
Or at least they perceived they did. I'm not going to get too heavy into judging some of the statements that come out because some of them go off the rails.
Yeah.
Let's face it. The last 4 years, if there's not a statement that hasn't come out about something social or political that didn't go off the rails, well, you weren't listening closely.
Right. And I'll touch on that in a minute, but I kind of want to get back to the thing where you were talking about, they've got opinions and, just play the game kind of thing. So I understand COVID and, the BLM, all this stuff that was happening, all at once. And it was tearing things apart and people just wanted some type of normalcy. Right. Mm-hmm. So this is just opinions, or if you got something more, go for it. But when you were saying about people, just play the game, because again, we're trying to get back to some kind of normalcy, and yet here we are watching basketball, whereas the vast majority of these players are African American, when BLM is so prominent with media and everything that's going on. You see ratings just plummet, and when you see ratings plummet, I understand that COVID was keeping people out of the arenas. But when you see ratings plummet so hard, where do you think they could have done better? I understand they're on a TV screen, right? And on TV screen, they've got all this stuff painted on their jerseys, painted on their shoes, on the courts. They're out there wearing shirts, BLM shirts and everything. And I get it. I get that that's their platform. Like, this is my platform, right? Okay, right. I'm on a podcast in my newly remodeled studio. I talk about it all the time. Nice. Well, thank you. And so you have, that is their format, their platform. But when you see all these people doing this stuff, and then you see ratings drop more than they have since 25 years, where do you think they could have done better? Or do you think that really was the only thing that they could do?
Well, the short answer is it was the only thing they could do. And by they, I mean the owners. Mm-hmm. They had a choice: either cancel the season because the players weren't going to play if the demands weren't met.
Mm-hmm.
And the demands didn't cost the owners money. This wasn't like the baseball negotiations where they were whining about what percentage of money they got. I don't want to go down that road because that's a separate conversation.
Yeah.
If you want to hear my opinion on that, listen to the old podcast when I was on. We talked about that a little bit.
Yeah.
But no, I don't think they had a choice. I do believe that the players would have sat out the rest of the season. I think, the ratings were terrible. This all hits in the middle of an election year with the most contentious election in the history of that I can remember anyway, or that I've even read of. I mean, my gosh, look at what's happened the last couple of days. I mean, it's clearly people are divided by this election and politics in general. So I do believe that LeBron James would not have played. There is no doubt in my mind. He has made it abundantly clear. He's got more money than some of the owners. Well, maybe not quite, but he's got more liquid money than many of the owners. He could have easily sat out. And there is one unspoken thing about sports that, as professional sports, that people don't talk about often, and the owners do not want you to really think about. If these guys all quit tomorrow, their multi-billion-dollar franchises are worth nothing.
Correct.
The players hold more power than people realize. Yeah, you have your agreements, but every single one of them could go play in China, in Russia, in Europe. And there's not a thing the NBA could do about it. They could start an international league outside of the U.S. and probably outside of Canada too, and put them all out of business.
Yeah. No,
so
absolutely.
To a point, it's like any other labor agreement or any other labor organization. The workers can shut it down, and I do believe they were at that point. What could have been done better? I think on the players' side, they had a unified voice of dissent, but their messages were disjointed at times.
Mm-hmm.
But they were reacting in real time. It was all new territory. They'd never had this platform before. The games were going to be bad anyway. If it had just gone back, if they had just done the bubble with nothing on the jerseys and nothing on the courts, there still wouldn't have been fans in the stands. It was still being played in the middle of summer when basketball is typically done in June. Sometime in June.
Do you think there could have been a middle ground? Do you think it could have been less? And here's why I say that. These people, let's just use LeBron as an example because he's the Michael Jordan of our time. So, I mean, this guy has money coming out the wazoo. A lot of it is coming from all of these different sponsorships and everything. I understand that they are going through a social issue. I mean, as we all are, we all sympathize. At least we should sympathize if we're. I got to edit myself because of your whatever. I want to make this a clean one. You're a human being. So, but do you feel? And notice that this is not a loaded question. I'm just asking. Do you feel that they owed America anything when it came to this? Meaning, I understand it's their platform. I understand that that's the biggest voice that they have. Knowing that ratings were so abysmal, they had to know that there was just so much going on, and there's already, every media outlet out there is just driving it into your brain all day long. Now, TV shows are getting political, and radio is getting political. The one place that a lot of people turn to escape is sports. I understand that they have, opinions and rights and everything. Do you think if they would have toned it down, they actually would have had a better audience and more people paying attention?
Yeah, I mean, if they'd played the corporate middle ground, as I like to call it, sure. They pushed people away. I don't know. It's one of those things. How much of your soul can you sell?
Yeah.
If it's something you believe into your core, how much are you willing to sell out? Especially if you don't have to.
Sure.
Yes, I do believe that if they'd taken the middle ground, if they had just, said, hey, we're upset with what we're seeing, but we're basketball players, and our job is to play basketball. I'll keep my opinion. If they'd taken the Michael Jordan route and just kept their opinions to themselves, because that's what Jordan did his entire carear.
Which that's a heck of a show if you haven't watched that, by the way. I'm sure you have, but
oh yeah,
good night. Anyway, yes.
But yeah, I think the ratings could have been better. I do think there was a little bit of game theory involved here from the owners. Okay, guys, we're with you. I mean, and many of the owners genuinely are with them.
Sure.
But they're also owners, and they have responsibilities to the other lesser owners and to their own bottom line and their own families. I think they said, you know what, this is a lost season. We're lucky to get anything. The players are really upset. They have a right to be. We could be making zero. Let's make what we can. Let them have their platform. If the ratings are good, hey, we'll go with it. But we know they're not going to be, because this is going to split the audience. I don't think you're seeing. I haven't watched a lot of NBA yet this year, but I don't think you're seeing a lot of the same. I don't think the jerseys they're doing the messages on the jerseys. There might be something on the floor, but I don't know. The NFL's had it all year long, and it's funny. I just remembered that it was in the end zone because of a play in the Browns game Saturday where a player almost caught it, and instead he was standing on the one of the slogans. I'm like, oh, yeah, that's right. They are doing that. It's like anything else. You put it in our face enough, or for so long, we look past it for what we're actually watching.
Right.
So.
And again, I told myself when I started this one, I'm not going to do a lot of clarifying. I'm going to do a little bit on this one only because it is very touchy.
Sure.
When I'm talking about ratings, I'm not talking about the big man in the office making all the money. I'm talking about Joe Schmo, John Q. Public sitting on the couch walking for something to, get his mind off of all the garbage that he's seeing all day long. And that's what I mean. Like, these players don't owe anything to the owners, in my opinion. I mean, they're the ones going out and doing the work, playing the game. I know it's just playing a game to some people, but it's hard work, man.
If we all could do it, we would.
That's all I'm saying. But I mean, these guys, I appreciate what they were doing. I truly do. I just think, like a lot of things, you had mob mentality in a way where everybody wanted to do more and more and more and almost push it too far, or, just shove it in your face. And that's where I think they lost it. You remember when we would watch games as kids, especially, you would watch the game, and then right before they would cut to commercial, they would have like signs, like a John 3:16 kind of thing out in the stand, or, it would show some guy in some crazy outfit kind of dancing kind of thing. Like, in my opinion, something like that, I feel, would have been much more beneficial to not just the players and the teams, but also to us, the viewer, because you don't have people in the stands, right? I mean, at least then you didn't have them. I know they're starting to slowly come back and whatnot, but when you have a voice, you have to be very careful with that voice. And I mean, I'm just some schmuck in a studio with, a podcast, but these guys literally hit millions and millions of people every day. And the fact that they have all of that power, essentially, to hit all these people, I wish they would have done it differently. Do I think they should have stopped it altogether? Of course not. Again, if you have a voice, if you have a platform, use it. That's what it's here for, especially in America. Everybody has a voice. Use it. But I just wish it would have been done differently. And I think if they would have gotten a better audience.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Just to kind of add on, I think many of the players said, we've been trying to do it differently for years. We're done.
Sure. And again, when you have all these things that are happening, like, Breonna Taylor and all the people that you mentioned before and everything going on, and when you're seeing it's people that look like you know, who are out here going, you know, getting murdered or having these things happen to you, it's hard not to get caught up in that, especially with the history of this country. It's hard not to. But like you were talking about with Jordan, I know he didn't have to deal with COVID and all this other nonsense, but he played it politically correct in my mind, where he kept it off the court, he kept it whatever. Again, there wasn't anything nearly as tragic as what we've been dealing with in the last 16 months, if not longer. So I just really wish. I know I don't even like professional basketball. I don't. I get so tired of watching it. It to me, it's boring. I will watch college basketball all day long. That's why we were talking about North Carolina and everything. I'm like, yeah, now we're talking. But I actually would have watched. I was, especially during those months of, you know, March to September especially, I was dying for any kind of good content. And even basketball, something live, watching other people, because we are social animals. That's how we're built. And to watch these guys and then but still have the same stuff just slammed in front of you all day long, I'm like, all right. Like, I wanted to, and I couldn't.
It was not the escape that you were looking for.
Yeah, and it's so frustrating. And I mean, everybody's different. Maybe there's people out there who are like, are you kidding me? They didn't do enough. You know, and everyone's different in that route. Sure.
Nobody's going to be 100% pleased in this situation.
No,
There's
not at all.
Pleasing about the situation. Nobody wanted to see this happen.
No.
It's just, what do we do when it does? And yeah, I think I understand where you're coming from, because I have almost always been, up until very recently, this year in fact, I've always been the guy that said, keep your politics out of my sports. Mm-hmm. I watch sports for an escape.
Right.
Something was different this time for me. I can't quantify it, but it was, how can I expect these guys to go on a court and entertain me when they lived through this stuff? Mm-hmm. Are they supposed to just turn a blind eye now that it's out in the public? Are they supposed to just continue to entertain me? It changed my perspective a little bit, and admittedly, I've been exposed to the perspective of a black athlete who grew up in the hood a lot over the last 5 years. Mm-hmm. And I'll explain briefly. My pastor at my church used to play in the NFL. He grew up in the poor side, in the poor area of San Antonio, Texas. Found his way to BYU as a football player because his high school team was really good, and he developed really well there. Got drafted by the Colts, played 6 years, and 6 years, I think, in Indianapolis and 1 year in Carolina for the Panthers. And, he often, and he's a fairly well-known preacher and author. His name's Dr. Derwin Gray. And he's one of in the evangelical movement, and I'm trying not to get too super far into the religion stuff,
right.
But it's relevant, and this is where my perspective's coming from. He has gathered a following because of what his philosophy is, which is that the church was always supposed to be a multi-ethnic, multi-generational, mission-shaped church. Mm-hmm. Because the idea, and gosh, we're really going off on a tangent here, but the idea was that Jesus came not just for the Jews, but for everybody. Mm-hmm. So if it's everybody, then it's everybody. Well, so all of a sudden, I'm listening to this preacher who's very dynamic, who's very compelling, week in, week out, and I just remember there was a shooting of what ended up being, I believe, an unarmed black man here in the Charlotte area, mm-hmm. and by a white officer, of course, because mm-hmm. That's just the way it seems to go. Mm-hmm. And I'm not trying to make a political statement. I'm just saying that's what gets the attention.
Right.
But it was one of those things where it was really sad for our church because we're a big church. We're like, our services gather about 4,000 people. Well, at least they did back in March.
Goodness, yeah.
But it's 3 different services by over 1,000 people each one. Point is, we had people that knew both the police officer and the victim. They're people we love. Mm-hmm. They're people that are devastated by this. His reactions to that, he had an honest moment. He said, guys, my son, he's 17 years old. I'm terrified for him that if he gets pulled over and he does even one thing wrong, he might wind up dead. And he wasn't saying that to make a political statement at all. He had said it with tears in his eyes.
Sure.
He was scared for his son's life, for being black and driving. He's like, that's why my son drives a beater. He's not driving one of my newer cars. He goes, I don't drive good cars anyway, or fancy cars anyway. Mm. But just because I don't think that's right for a preacher. But I don't want him driving something that someone might think he stole. Because I don't want him to lose his life. And I had to stop and sit and think about that for a second. I'm like, this guy isn't saying this to try to get you to vote a certain way. He said it because he's terrified for his son. Mm-hmm. And I mean, let's be clear. He's black, but his wife is white, so the son's mixed race. And he said it in a moment of honesty. So to bring this back full circle, that's the perspective of a black athlete that grew up poor, made it the whole way through, and is still fearful because of the culture that we live in. Now, is it completely founded? I don't know, but it happens. And when we start seeing it happening, and we start seeing people not being held accountable for their actions, at least in a way that they felt that should have been held accountable, I at least have to appreciate the perspective. And then how am I going to sit here as a sports fan and go, just entertain me?
Right. I want to dive into this a little more if you've got the time, but sure. I think we're going to split this up because I want to make sure that we give it its due diligence. So for those of you that decided to call it quits here, thanks for listening. Definitely check us out on 57percenttrue.com. You can also check us out on Spotify if you're not already listening on Spotify, Google Podcasts, all the good stuff out there. We're growing every day. Whenever you find us, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. That way you know when we got a new episode coming out, and we can continue entertaining you as much or as little as we have been so far. Make sure you also check us out on Facebook and Twitter. Handles are going to be at 57%true. Make sure you spell out that % sign, because if you try to use the % sign when typing it in, you're going to make a rip in the space-time continuum. God knows what's going to happen after that. Also, check us out. We have a new Patreon page. If you go to patreon.com/57%true, drop us a couple bucks. First person that donates $10 monthly will actually get a prize. We'll figure out what that's going to be. So, anyway, check out part 2 coming up here very shortly. For my good buddy Tad, my name is Jason, and I need an ending catchphrase.